The desert had a way of staring back at people. Lieutenant Kara Bishop learned that her first week in Al-Sara. It wasn't the kind of place that welcomed new arrivals. It judged them, peeled them apart, and waited to see who cracked first. She stood near the edge of the landing zone that morning, wind whipping grains of sand against her boots, while the distant whine of a medevac helicopter faded into silence. Her gloved hand tightened around the strap of her medic pack, same weight she'd carried for years, tour after tour across different continents. But today, under the shimmering heat, it felt slightly heavier. Maybe because of the mission report she'd skimmed the night before. A patrol ambushed, casualties unclear, and a commanding officer whose tone in the documents felt strangely defensive. "Lieutenant Bishop?" a voice called. Carr turned to see Sergeant Malik Rowan. Tall, square-shouldered, and wearing that permanent expression of someone who hadn't slept enough since 2019. He extended a hand. "Rowan, logistics." "Kara," she replied simply, shaking it. He smirked. "You're the Navy SEAL medic everyone's been whispering about." She raised an eyebrow. "Whispering?" "You know how this place works," Rowan shrugged. "Any newcomer is gossip. A female SEAL, that's gossip with jet fuel." Kara didn't respond. She just fell into step beside him as they began the walk toward the main compound. Her boots sank slightly into the sand with every step, leaving fleeting footprints swallowed by the wind. Inside the base, the atmosphere changed. Concrete walls replaced dunes, and the hum of generators drowned the silence of the desert. Soldiers moved in and out of rooms, their faces tired, their uniforms stained with dust and sweat. Al-Sara wasn't the worst of postings, but it bore the scars of a place always stretched thin. Rowan gestured toward a small operation room. "You'll be working here. Medical unit is a mess right now. Too many wounded, not enough staff." I read the casualty logs. His expression shifted, carefully neutral. Logs aren't always complete. She caught the implication. "I prefer them complete." He gave a low laugh, but didn't elaborate. Inside the medical bay, the air was thick with antiseptic and exhaustion. Carr began organizing supplies, checking expired kits, calibrating portable vitals monitors, automatic movements that steadied her breathing. She'd always believed preparation wasn't a task, it was a shield. Halfway through restocking an airway kit, the doors slammed open. General Marcus Vane stepped inside like a storm someone forgot to predict. Tall, heavily built, with a trimmed gray beard and eyes that looked carved from stone. Kara straightened instinctively. "You must be Lieutenant Bishop," he said, scanning her with something sharper than curiosity. "Yes, sir." "You're here to support my unit. You'll follow briefings as I give them." His tone wasn't aggressive, yet, but it carried an edge of authority, edge of territorial authority. "Understood, sir," Kara replied calmly. Vane's attention drifted to the casualty chart she'd placed on the desk. He frowned. "Who authorized you to access those?" "They're medical files, sir. I need them." "You need what I say you need." The words dropped heavy, like a warning disguised as protocol. Kara held his gaze. "My job is to treat the wounded effectively. Incomplete reports slow that down." For a second, the room felt colder. Rowan appeared in the doorway, the tension thick enough to slice. "General, command is requesting you in the comms room." Vane didn't break eye contact with Kara. "Lieutenant, this base runs on my orders. Don't get creative." He left with footsteps that echoed authority, impatience, and something else. Fragility, maybe, hidden under armor? Once he was gone, Rowan exhaled. That man hates being challenged. I wasn't challenging. I was doing my job. "You'll still pay for it," Rowan muttered. Kara didn't answer. She finished sorting her supplies, tied her hair back into a tighter knot, and stepped outside. The sun had begun to set, casting long shadows across the base. For a moment, she stared at the horizon. The desert watched her again. Quiet, steady, knowing. Kara squared her shoulders. If this place wanted to test her, it would find she wasn't easy to break.
Night fell over Al-Sara like a blanket of ash. The generators hummed in low, uneven pulses, and distant artillery thundered somewhere beyond the dunes. Kara sat alone in the medical bay, the overhead lights casting a white, sterile glow on the metal desk. She had intended to rest. Instead, she found herself staring at the casualty chart that General had bristled at earlier. She shouldn't read it again. But her instincts, the same ones that had saved lives in places far worse than this, refused to quiet down. Kara slid the folder toward herself and reopened it. 4 soldiers, 3 wounded, 1 dead. Except the numbers didn't align with the field telemetry data she'd seen earlier. Pulse readings, timestamps, and GPS logs told a different story. A story of a team left exposed too long. A story of bad intel and worse decisions. A story someone needed to bury. Kara leaned back, jaw clenched. She'd seen commanders cover their mistakes before, but something about this one stung harder. Maybe because she had seen the body of the dead soldier only hours ago. Private Hallam, 20 years old, freckles still visible through the dust on his skin. He died with his helmet on crooked, like he tried to fix it but ran out of time. Her hand tightened. The door clicked softly. Sergeant Rowan stepped inside carrying 2 metal mugs. "You look like you're interrogating that folder to death." Kara took a breath. "It doesn't match." "Don't say that out loud," Rowan muttered, setting a mug beside her. "People disappear from assignments for less." She looked up at him. "This isn't about politics. Someone died because of a preventable call." Rowan rubbed the back of his neck, glancing at the closed door as if expecting it to burst open. "Look, Vane doesn't tolerate being questioned, especially not by, well, a woman," Kara finished. Rowan winced. "A Navy SEAL medic who happens to notice things." Kara let out a cold exhale. "I'm not here to pick a fight." "I know, but he thinks you are." Silence filled the room. Heavy, uncomfortable. Then, footsteps. Sharp, purposeful. Rowan straightened instantly. Kara closed the folder, but it was too late. The door swung open with the rigid authority only one man on base possessed. General Marcus Vane stepped in, eyes locking onto the folder on the desk like a predator spotting movement in tall grass. He didn't speak at first. He simply stared, long enough that Rowan shifted his weight, tense. "Lieutenant," Vane finally said, voice too calm. "You're working late." "So are you, sir," Kara replied evenly. Vane approached until he stood only inches from the desk. "That report is not your concern." "I thought it was," Kara said. "Medical personnel need complete incident logs." His jaw twitched, barely visible under the beard. "You're new here. You don't understand the pressure this base is under." "I understand enough to know this doesn't add up," she said quietly. Rowan shot her a look. "Stop." But Kara wasn't challenging Vane, she was stating a fact. Still, the general heard it as defiance. "You're out of line," he said, voice dropping. "SEAL or not, medic or not, you follow my orders, not your interpretations." Kara met his stare without blinking. "I follow the truth, sir. Soldiers' lives depend on it." Something snapped in Vane's eyes, brief like a crack in glass, but enough to reveal what sat beneath his authority. Fear. Fear of losing control. Fear of responsibility. Fear of exposure. He stepped back slowly. "Lieutenant Bishop, some reports are classified for reasons beyond your clearance. Let it go." She didn't answer, and silence hardened between them. Vane turned toward the door but paused. He didn't look back when he spoke. "If you continue to pursue this, you will regret it." The door shut with a metallic finality that echoed in the room long after he was gone. Rowan exhaled shakily. "Kara, what are you doing?" "What's right," she replied, gathering the documents and securing them in her pack. "If something happened out there, someone needs to know." Rowan swallowed. "Vane won't let this go. Neither will I." She slung her pack over her shoulder and stepped out into the cool desert night. Above her, the stars glimmered sharp and indifferent. Beneath them, the wind shifted, sending sand swirling across the concrete floor. It felt like the desert itself was holding its breath, watching, waiting. And Kara knew tonight was only the beginning of the storm.
The base did not truly sleep. Even at 2 in the morning, Al-Sara breathed in metallic pulses. Radio chatter, distant engines, the buzz of floodlights cutting through sand-laden wind. Kara walked the gravel path toward the comms tower, boots crunching underfoot, each step a steady beat against the weight in her chest. She had secured the casualty report in her pack, but the unease followed her like a shadow that knew her name. Inside the tower, Corporal Amelia Graves sat hunched over the main console, headphones pressed to one ear. Amelia was young but sharp, the kind of operator who could detect a hostile signal buried under layers of static. When she saw Kara enter, she lifted the headset. "You look like you just walked out of a sandstorm," Amelia said quietly. Kara approached her station. "I need the raw telemetry from Patrol Echo 5, before the General's office touched it." Amelia's eyes widened. "Kara, that is restricted. I could be court-martialed." "I know. That is why I'm asking you only for what is legal to transmit to medical. Vitals, timestamps, rescue beacon logs, nothing more." Amelia hesitated, glancing at the closed blinds, as if they might come alive and report her. If Vane finds out, he will. Eventually. But if he's right, there will be nothing in the data to contradict him. If he's wrong, we cannot pretend we did not see it. A long pause hung between them. Finally, Amelia exhaled. "Give me 5 seconds." Her fingers danced across the keyboard. Lines of code scrolled. Another screen flickered to life. Kara stood behind her, arms crossed, heart steady but heavy. "There," Amelia whispered. "Raw data from the team's biometric sensors." Kara leaned in. The vitals told the real story. Timestamps that extended beyond the official report. Heart rate spiking much later than claimed. Radio pings that suggested the squad had requested extraction twice without response. A chill ran through her. This was not just a miscalculation. It was negligence. And someone had tried to hide it. Before she could say a word, Amelia stiffened. The comms console emitted a soft chime, a secure channel being accessed remotely. "That's not me," she murmured. A second later, the system flashed. "Admin override, level black." Amelia's face drained of color. That is General Vane's clearance." Kara zipped her pack shut. "We never saw this." Amelia nodded rapidly and wiped the logs, fingers trembling. Just as Kara stepped toward the door, Amelia grabbed her wrist. "Be careful. You are not dealing with a man afraid of breaking rules. You are dealing with a man who thinks he is the rules." Kara did not answer. She simply pulled her wrist free and slipped out into the night. The wind had grown harsher, carrying fine sand that hissed across metal siding. She moved quickly toward the barracks, intending to store the data in a secure locker and sleep for at least an hour before morning duties. But when she rounded the corner, she stopped cold. 3 military police stood outside her quarters. Their posture was too stiff, their hands resting on holsters, not in threat, but readiness. Lieutenant Colonel Shaw, the base's executive officer, approached her. His expression was unreadable in the dim yellow light. "Lieutenant Bishop," Shaw said, voice level, "General Vane requests your presence." Kara kept her breathing even. "At this hour?" "At this hour." "May I know the reason?" "You cannot." Shaw was not a cruel man, but his eyes carried a warning. Do not escalate. Kara nodded once. "Then I will follow." As they walked with the MPs on either side, she felt the weight of the report in her pack, the one thing she could not let disappear. Every instinct told her to hide it, pass it off, or run. But she did none of those things. She kept walking. They crossed the courtyard toward headquarters where the lights burned too bright for this hour, where power hummed like a contained storm, and where someone waited who had already nearly lost control earlier in the night. Inside the entry hall, Shaw gestured toward a closed office door. "General Vane is inside," he said. Kara stepped forward. But before she touched the handle, a distant explosion rolled over the desert, faint but unmistakable, like thunder muffled under sand. Shaw turned toward the sound. Kara's pulse surged. Something had just shifted in the dark. And whatever waited behind that door was no longer the most dangerous thing on base. The blast faded into the dark, like a breath swallowed by the desert, but the echo lingered long enough to pull every muscle in the corridor tight. Lieutenant Colonel Shaw pivoted toward the entrance,
instinctively scanning for follow-on detonations. The military police reached for their radios. Kara remained still, one hand hovering near the door to General Vane's office, her pulse caught between two threats, the one outside and the one standing behind this wooden barrier. Shaw pressed a finger to his earpiece. "Operations, this is Shaw. Confirm the blast." Static, then a clipped answer. "Unverified ripple. Possible fuel depot flare. Stand by for confirmation." Kara felt something off in the tone, too tentative, too quick. The base did not guess about fuel flares, it knew. She lowered her hand from the door to General Vane's office. "Sir, if this is an attack," Shaw cut in. "We do not know that yet, and until we do, General Vane still wants to see you." The corridor lights flickered, not from power loss, but from someone toggling the internal grid. A small gesture, easy to overlook, except Kara had lived too long in places where flickers meant decisions far above her pay grade were being made behind closed doors. The MPs opened the office door. "Lieutenant Bishop," a voice called from deeper inside, not shouted, simply placed, as if the speaker assumed obedience was a foregone conclusion. Kara stepped inside. The door closed behind her with a soft click, sealing her in with the man who had already shown he was willing to cross a line no officer should cross. The room smelled faintly of cordite, recently cleaned weapons, not recently fired, yet enough to suggest a readiness that bordered on ritual. General Marcus Vane stood near his desk, sleeves rolled up, eyes sharper than the overhead lights. He studied her the way a predator measured angles, not intentions. "You took your time," he said. "There was an explosion outside." I paused to assess. Vane waved the comment away. "A distraction, nothing more." Kara did not sit. She waited. Vane clasped his hands behind his back. "You accessed medical and telemetry files without my authorization." Kara held his gaze. "I accessed data required for accurate casualty treatment. That is not what the logs show." "Then perhaps the logs have been modified." The air in the room tightened. It was a dangerous sentence, but not as dangerous as the truth curling behind it. Vane stepped around her, slow, controlled. "You are a medic, Lieutenant, not an investigator, not a strategist. Your purpose is to keep soldiers alive, not question why they died." Kara did not move. "My purpose is to prevent unnecessary deaths. That includes the patrol you sent into a dead zone without extraction coverage." Vane froze mid-step. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was the pressure of something cracking beneath the surface. "You are out of line," Vane said quietly, "and you are not above accountability." For a moment, his mask slipped. Only a flicker, but enough. He moved to his desk drawer. Not fast, not reckless. Intentional. Kara's hand drifted to her thigh, not to draw, but to anchor herself. She watched every micro-movement. But instead of a weapon, Vane pulled out a small data drive and set it on the desk. "You will destroy that. Then you will amend your report. You will say the team died on contact. No delays, no unanswered calls, no missteps." "And if I do not?" Kara asked. "Then we will revisit what happened in the supply yard. And this time, Lieutenant, I will not miss." The explosion outside had been distant, indirect. This threat was immediate. Kara's heartbeat remained steady, though her skin prickled with awareness. She measured the distance to the door, to his hands, to the objects in the room she could use. She measured his instability. She measured her own discipline. "Is that an order, General?" she asked. "It is survival." Before she could answer, a second explosion thundered across the base, closer this time. The window buzzed, the ceiling vibrated. Dust sifted down like pale smoke. Someone pounded on the office door. "General Vane, sir," a voice shouted, breathless. "You need to see this. The blast was not an accident. We have incoming hostiles heading for the perimeter." Vane's jaw tightened. He looked at Kara. Not with humility, not with regret, but with the fury of a man who believed the world itself was interrupting him. "Lieutenant, do not move." He strode to the door as the shouting outside escalated. Kara was standing alone in the office, the forbidden data drive glinting under the lights.
And for the first time, she realized the night was about to force every secret in this base into the open, whether anyone was ready or not.
The night outside Al-Sahra had turned violent. Explosions echoed across the desert, scattering sand in orange glows. Kara Bishop remained in the office for a heartbeat longer than protocol allowed, her gaze fixed on the blinking data drive. The hum of the fluorescent lights seemed louder now, each flicker a warning. General Vane had already moved, flanked by his MPs, to assess the breach at the perimeter. Kara could hear the hurried commands, short, clipped shouts carried over radios. Something in the cadence told her this was no routine threat. The attackers were precise, trained. Someone had slipped through the defenses. Kara's instincts told her to go after him, but she waited. Patience was a weapon, and she had always wielded it well. She checked her medic pack, IV kits, field dressings, compact defibrillator, trauma shears. Every piece was in place, every weight counted, every movement rehearsed. A sudden thud reverberated from the outer wall. Kara flinched, then forced her shoulders back. The sound of gunfire followed, a staccato rhythm that she recognized immediately. This was not a random ambush. Someone wanted to test Vane, and by extension, the base's command structure. Lieutenant Colonel Shaw appeared in the doorway, pale. Kara, perimeter breach. Hostiles are inside the first compound. Vane, he wants a status report now, but the medbay is already compromised. You have to go out there. Kara didn't hesitate. She tightened her gloves and secured her helmet strap. She said, "Show me the way." The corridor to the breach was illuminated by strobing emergency lights. The smell of burnt circuits and gunpowder made her stomach tense, but her stride was confident. Each corner revealed chaos. Soldiers shouting over comms, sand kicked up from every explosion, and a tension that could choke a lesser heart. At the first intersection, she caught sight of General Vane. He was directing a squad, pistol drawn, barking orders with a force that made men obey without hesitation. Kara's gut twisted at the sight of this man, who had nearly crossed a line with her earlier, was now fighting for the lives of the very soldiers he had endangered with his arrogance. A sudden volley of gunfire erupted from the right flank. Vane ducked instinctively, but the bullets tore across the sand closer than he expected. Kara reacted immediately, sprinting toward the point of contact, her medic training overriding caution. A soldier had taken a hit, blood dark on dust-covered uniform, eyes wide with shock. Kara knelt beside him, ignoring the ping of distant rounds, and assessed the wound. A deep entry through the thigh, arterial. She applied a tourniquet with practiced hands, voice calm as the chaos swirled around. "Hold on," she murmured, locking eyes with him. "I've got you." Nearby, another soldier fell. Kara pivoted, pulling her kit forward, setting up for a rapid triage. The wind carried gunpowder and fear, but inside her, a cold focus sharpened every sense. Then she saw him, General Vane, pinned behind a wall by the same hostile fire. His usual composure was strained, the rigid mask of command slipping as rounds ricocheted around him. Kara's instincts screamed. She could not ignore it. She sprinted across open ground, bullets zipping past her ears. Her body moved with a seal's precision, low, angled, deliberate. Reaching Vane, she pressed him against the wall and whispered over the chaos, "Stay low. I'll cover you." He looked at her, eyes wide in disbelief, and for a brief fraction of a second, the arrogance vanished. He nodded once. Kara assessed him quickly. He was uninjured, but pinned, vulnerable in a way he had never tolerated before. Her fingers brushed the data drive in her pack, still pulsing with the forbidden truth. Every instinct told her the night had just begun, and the confrontation with Vane was far from over. Somewhere behind the next wall, another explosion lit the night, casting long, trembling shadows across sand and concrete. Kara took a deep breath. She had no choice now. The base, the soldiers, and even the man who had threatened her life were all in her hands. And Kara Bishop would not fail.
The perimeter had erupted into a living nightmare. Kara Bishop moved like a shadow, her boots barely raising sand as she assessed wounded soldiers scattered behind overturned crates and sandbags. Explosions flared intermittently, painting the night in orange and black, while gunfire stitched a chaotic rhythm through the base. She knelt beside a corporal whose shoulder was torn open. Fingers steady, she applied pressure and prepared a field dressing, noting the rapid pulse and labored breathing. Her voice cut through the chaos. "You're going to be okay. Focus on my voice, not the fire." Nearby, Vane remained pinned behind a concrete wall, pistol in hand, firing short, calculated bursts at advancing targets. The arrogance she had encountered earlier was gone, replaced by raw survival instinct. Kara's eyes flicked to him. He was competent in combat, but untrained to survive in this kind of chaos without relying on his men. A sudden volley of gunfire hit the wall beside them, sand and concrete spalling around her. Her pulse quickened, but her hands remained steady. She dragged the wounded corporal behind the partial cover of a destroyed supply crate and worked quickly to stabilize him. Each second counted. "Medic!" shouted a private from her left. His arm was shredded, blood pumping like a dark river. Kara sprinted toward him, weaving through debris, instincts guiding every movement. Her training as a SEAL medic had taught her one immutable rule: assess, prioritize, act. She stabilized him with field dressings, tying tourniquets with hands that never trembled, though adrenaline screamed in her veins. Then she saw it. A group of hostiles attempting to breach the command center. Their approach was disciplined, organized. Someone had orchestrated this attack with precision. Kara's eyes locked on Vane. She realized he was about to expose himself to cover the entry. Without thinking, she sprinted to his side. "Stay low," she yelled. Her voice carried over the cacophony. Vane hesitated, eyes meeting hers, understanding dawning. She guided him to kneel behind debris, positioning herself between him and the incoming threat. Bullets whizzed past, some striking near enough to make the air shudder. Kara's breath was even, trained, focused, but her mind cataloged every detail. The positions of soldiers, the path of incoming rounds, the patterns of enemy fire. She felt the weight of responsibility, every life in that courtyard, every breath dependent on her ability to remain calm. Then a sudden crash. A wall of the supply depot had been hit, sending splintered beams tumbling. Kara pressed her body to the ground, dragging the wounded corporal with her. She heard Vane shout orders, directing troops with a clarity that belied the panic in his eyes. Kara realized something. He had learned, in these chaotic moments, the value of trust. Not in authority, not in rank, but in competence. And she had earned that trust by presence, by action, not words. The night stretched long, sand mixed with blood and smoke, coating the base in a suffocating haze. Kara worked tirelessly, moving between the wounded, directing fire where possible, signaling medevac coordination. Every time Vane glanced at her, there was a silent acknowledgement. She was the lifeline this base had never fully recognized. Then a sudden flash from the comms tower drew her attention. Another small explosion, equipment igniting in the control room, cut communications temporarily. Panic stirred among the soldiers, but Kara did not flinch. She took a deep breath and shouted, "Cover me, I'm moving to secure the comms." Bullets ricocheted around her as she sprinted, body low, arms protecting the wounded. She felt every heartbeat, every microsecond of delay, every human life contingent on her precise movement. And in the back of her mind, the cold reality lingered. The general who had threatened her life hours before now relied on her to survive. Kara Bishop had crossed the line between soldier and savior, and in this firestorm, that line would blur again and again.
Kara Bishop reached the comms tower just as the fire inside turned it into a furnace of sparks and smoke. The equipment racks hissed and smoked, wires snapping under stress, alarms blaring in shrill, chaotic bursts. She assessed the situation in an instant. Damaged radios, live electrical arcs, and wounded soldiers trapped among the debris. "Stand back," she shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. Bullets ricocheted from the perimeter, embedding themselves into the metal walls.
She moved with the precision of someone who had survived dozens of combat zones, careful, deliberate, and unhesitating. One corporal groaned under a collapsed beam. Kara dropped her pack and, with controlled force, lifted the timber just enough to drag him free. Blood streaked her hands, but she didn't flinch. "You're safe now. Keep breathing. That's all that matters," she said, locking eyes with him, letting her calm steady him in the storm. Through the smoke, she saw General Vane near the stairwell, trying to coordinate reinforcements. His stance was rigid, trained, but Kara noticed the micro-flickers in his movements. Hesitation, tension, the realization that he had underestimated the fragility of command under fire. "Medic!" a private yelled, dragging his wounded comrade toward her. Kara didn't pause. She moved between the two men, stabilizing the immediate trauma and issuing rapid instructions. Her voice was firm, calm, authoritative, each word a lifeline in the madness. Then came the moment that froze her blood. From the shattered window, a hostile operative emerged, weapon aimed directly at Vane. The general froze, his reflexes slightly too slow for the trajectory of the bullet. Kara's eyes widened, instinct screaming. She reacted before thought. A seal's reflex. Dive, twist, shield. Her body struck Vane with a controlled force that pushed him to the side, taking the brunt of the potential impact herself. The shot missed, but the message was clear. Neither rank nor authority would protect anyone here. Only action and skill mattered. Breathing hard, Kara stabilized herself, eyes scanning the corridor. The operative had disappeared back into the chaos, but the reality had set in. The general's life, and potentially dozens more, depended on her decisiveness, her training, her courage. Vane's gaze met hers for the first time since their confrontation earlier. No words, only a raw acknowledgement. Kara nodded once. She understood the unspoken calculus. She would protect, and he would follow, not because of authority, but because, in this storm, competence commanded respect. Kara moved to the central console, hastily rerouting communications through remaining channels. The alarms blared, red lights flashing against the smoke-choked walls, but she stayed calm. Every second she could stabilize the wounded, redirect reinforcements, or suppress panic meant lives saved. Shouts and the sounds of movement came from every direction. Soldiers scrambled to respond to attacks at multiple entry points. Kara assessed, prioritized, and acted. Triage, communication, extraction coordination. She felt the weight of each decision, but never let it crack her composure. And then, through the smoke, debris, and chaos, she caught sight of the data drive she had secured hours before. The knowledge it contained, the truth of negligence, the unrecorded deaths, pressed against her conscience. The drive was both a liability and the only key to accountability. Kara knew the moment she made it public would ignite a conflict far beyond the battlefield she now navigated. Another volley of gunfire erupted. Sand sprayed, metal twisted, and the night seemed to fold in on itself. Kara tightened her grip on her medic pack, ready for the next wave of chaos, the next life to save, the next split-second decision. Through all of it, she realized a truth she had always known. Heroism was silent, invisible, and measured in moments like these. Split seconds between life and death, courage and fear, action and hesitation. And tonight, that truth would not remain hidden. The base shook with a distant explosion, and Kara's eyes locked on the stairwell. Somewhere above, someone had crossed a line. Somewhere in the heart of Al-Sahara, the reckoning had begun. She exhaled slowly. There was no turning back now.
The comms tower trembled under a distant explosion, shaking loose dust that fell like gray rain over Kara Bishop's shoulders. She crouched low, assessing the medbay from the shattered doorway, eyes flicking between the wounded soldiers and the chaos beyond. Each breath carried the scent of burning insulation and gunpowder, and each heartbeat echoed a warning. One wrong move, one hesitation, and lives, including her own, could end. Vane had retreated to the office for coordination, but Karen knew his presence there was fragile. The man had authority, yes, but authority meant little when bullets chose their own trajectory. She could hear his voice through the glass panels, clipped orders issuing over the radio, but Kara sensed the tension hidden in his tone. He was skilled, dangerous,
but unprepared for this level of unpredictability. A corporal shouted for aid nearby. Kara sprinted toward him, weaving between falling crates and sand-coated debris. Her gloves were slick with blood, her ears ringing from the constant staccato of gunfire. She pressed a tourniquet on a shattered thigh, giving the soldier firm instructions. Focus on my voice. You hear me? Just breathe. No hesitation, no second guessing. Her SEAL training had engraved every reaction into muscle memory. Every movement counted. Every second was measured in survival. Then came a sound that made her stop mid-breath. A heavy boot step behind her, deliberate and threatening. She spun, ready, scanning the shadows. Through the smoke and the flickering red lights, she saw him, General Marcus Vane, pistol drawn, eyes narrowed in fury and disbelief. "You've overstepped, Lieutenant," he said, voice low but venomous. "This is not your battlefield. These are my orders." "I'm not here to defy orders," Kerr replied evenly, sliding the injured corporal behind cover. "I'm here to keep soldiers alive, including yours, sir." Vane's jaw tightened. "Do you think your courage gives you the right to judge me?" Kara didn't flinch. Her eyes narrowed slightly, calculating distance, cover, and threat. She knew he was serious. "I'm not judging. I'm acting. That's my duty." His finger tensed on the trigger. Kara froze for a fraction of a second, enough to register the danger. 5 rounds. The words hung in the air, unspoken but implied in the tight set of his shoulders and the gleam on the barrel. Time slowed. The world narrowed to the glint of metal, the pulse in her ears, the faint shuffle of sand under his boots. Kara's mind went through drills. Dive, roll, neutralize, preserve life. She executed the first move before thought could betray her. A low pivot, dropping to the ground, shoulder taking the brunt of a ricocheted sand blast. The shots tore through the space she had just vacated. Sand and debris erupted around her, smothering light, sound, and certainty. She rolled, coming up behind cover, heart steady despite the adrenaline. Vane's face contorted, frustration and disbelief battling with the training he had relied on for decades. Kara's eyes met his, not in fear but in cold calculation. She knew every step he could take, every muscle twitch, and she waited for the right moment. Around them, soldiers froze, unsure if this was combat or command gone rogue. The room stank of gunpowder and fear. Kara's gloved hands brushed against the concrete wall, feeling its vibration, absorbing its presence, preparing for the next move. Then she saw the opportunity, a micro gap between his footwork and his stance. She acted, sliding forward with a SEAL's precision, locking his arm, redirecting the weapon without firing. Vane struggled, astonishment and fury painted on his face. The base held its collective breath. Somewhere, deep in the chaos outside, distant artillery muted its thump. The world contracted to this one act. Kara Bishop, the medic, neutralizing the threat that had nearly ended her life moments ago. And still, in the firestorm of Al-Shara, the night had only begun to reveal its true test. Kara exhaled slowly, awareness sharp, adrenaline coursing, every muscle primed. She had survived the first strike. The storm was far from over.
The office smelled of sweat, gunpowder, and dust, a suffocating blend that made every breath deliberate. Kara Bishop held General Vane pinned against the concrete wall, her forearm locked across his chest, weapon redirected away from both of them. His eyes burned with disbelief and rage, but he was still alive. Alive because she had reflexes honed over decades in combat zones and a principle that overrode vengeance. Outside, the base was a furnace of chaos. Explosions punctuated the desert night, throwing shadows of panicked soldiers across walls and sand dunes. Kara could hear the crackle of radios, the staccato of gunfire, and distant shouts. Every second mattered. Every movement carried the weight of life or death. Vane's chest heaved as he struggled against her hold. You cannot," he spat, voice trembling between anger and panic. "I am the general. You tried to kill me," Kara said evenly, voice cutting through the din. "And now I choose control over vengeance. That is the difference between you and me." His hands fumbled, trying to regain purchase on his sidearm. Kara tightened her grip, pressing him into the wall. Microseconds counted, and she felt the surge of adrenaline, the perfect clarity of a SEAL trained to respond instinctively under fire. A soldier stumbled past the doorway, eyes wide. "Lieutenant, the perimeter breach. They're pushing forward." Kara's mind cataloged the possibilities in an instant. Wounded soldiers, exposed positions, incoming hostiles, and the unpredictable behavior of a powerful officer she had just neutralized. She could not afford hesitation. She adjusted her hold, controlling Vane's arm, then spoke in a calm, commanding tone. "Listen to me. Drop the weapon or someone else dies. Now." Vane's eyes flicked toward the doorway, toward the open chaos outside. For the first time, doubt edged into his arrogance. Slowly, he released the pistol, letting it clatter against the floor. Kara's fingers secured it, then immediately checked his stance. He was uninjured, but still volatile. Her gaze softened slightly. "I am going to stabilize you. You will not bleed unnecessarily. You may have tried to end me, but I will not return harm." Vane blinked, disbelief mingling with a reluctant respect. Why would you?" "Because discipline and humanity define a soldier, not rank. And because if you cannot survive without killing your own medic, you are not a leader." She signaled toward the doorway. Soldiers on either side formed a protective corridor. Kara guided him down, supporting his weight with precision. Every step, calculated, controlled, aware of both external threats and internal tension. As they emerged into the courtyard, the chaos of the perimeter pressed against them. Explosions flared, sending clouds of sand into the air. Soldiers scrambled, some firing suppressive rounds, others dragging the wounded toward temporary field triage. Kara's eyes never left Vane. She stabilized him, checked vital signs, and prepared an emergency field bandage for a minor shoulder scrape. Vane tried to protest, but Kara silenced him with a steady hand on his chest. "Not a word. Move." For a fleeting moment, the desert night seemed to pause. The chaos, the fear, the explosions, all suspended in the narrow corridor of survival Kara had carved. And in that silence, the base's collective gaze was drawn to one undeniable fact. A woman SEAL had just neutralized, restrained, and saved the man who had tried to end her life. She exhaled slowly, letting tension slide from her shoulders, yet remaining hyper-aware. Around them, soldiers moved like a well-oiled machine, guided by the discipline that Kara herself had reinforced through her calm, precise actions. The threat outside had not ended, but inside this microcosm of command, she had established control. Vane's eyes met hers again, this time not with arrogance, but with a flicker of comprehension, a lesson learned the hard way. Kara Bishop had proven, in the crucible of fire and chaos, that courage, skill, and humanity outweighed rank and brute force. And the night was far from over.
The office was deathly still, save for the hum of failing lights and the distant percussion of gunfire beyond the walls. Kara Bishop's heart maintained a steady rhythm, honed over years in combat zones where panic was a liability. Every nerve was primed, every muscle coiled like a spring. General Marcus Vane stood a few feet away, pistol drawn, eyes wild, the arrogance and fear colliding in a dangerous cocktail. "Die now," he barked, the words sharp, cold, and unhesitating. 5 rounds he fired. The air cracked and sang with the violence of intent. Kara's body reacted before thought. SEAL reflexes honed over decades took over. She dove low, pivoting across the office floor with precision, narrowly avoiding the searing path of the bullets. The ricocheted rounds shredded plaster and concrete, dust raining over her like fine gray snow. She rolled behind the desk, keeping Vane in her peripheral vision, calculating every micro-movement, every potential trajectory of the next shot. Her breath was even, controlled. Her mind cataloged exits, cover points, and the positioning of her adversary. Vane's finger trembled on the trigger, rage distorted his features, his pride shattered in microseconds, replaced with panic. Kara seized the opportunity.
With a swift, controlled motion, she lunged, locking his dominant arm in a CQB hold, redirecting the pistol downward and stabilizing his balance against the concrete wall. The echoes of gunfire outside masked the struggle inside. Kara's gloved hands were firm, unyielding, yet precise. She had no intention of hurting him, only controlling him, neutralizing the threat. Vane thrashed, but Kara's training overrode his brute force. Every move she made was intentional, calculated, a deadly dance of restraint and efficiency. She pressed a knee gently to stabilize his center of gravity and whispered, "You are done, not a word, not a movement. Live." The room seemed to inhale with the weight of that moment. Outside, distant explosions flared like a cruel spotlight, highlighting sand particles suspended in the lamplight. Soldiers pressed against the doorway, unsure whether to intervene or give the medic in the general space. Kara's gaze swept over the office. The data drive still pulsed quietly in her pack, its weight heavier now than ever, carrying the evidence of Vane's prior negligence and the deaths he had caused. The storm of moral and tactical responsibility pressed against her mind, but her discipline remained unbroken. Vane's breathing was ragged, but he was alive. Shock and disbelief contorted his features as he realized the paradox. The woman he had tried to kill had not only survived, but controlled the encounter without causing fatal harm. Kara's presence was a wall of calm, unyielding in the center of chaos. She stepped back, maintaining her hold until MPs arrived to secure him. "Check the weapon," she instructed, voice steady, "and stay alive. There is no room for further mistakes." Vane did not respond immediately. His eyes lingered on hers, not with defiance, but with a dawning respect, fear, and understanding. The power dynamics had shifted irrevocably. The office, thick with dust and tension, had witnessed the principle stronger than rank: courage, discipline, and humanity. The distant shouts and explosions outside reminded her that the battlefield was still alive, still demanding action. Kara exhaled slowly, releasing the tension just enough to remain functional, yet not enough to let down her guard. She had survived the 5 rounds, she had neutralized a dangerous threat, and she had done so without compromise. In that suspended moment, time seemed to stretch, a lesson etched in the smoke-filled night of Alsara. In the crucible of chaos, heroism was silent, deliberate, and measured not in firepower, but in restraint. And Kara Bishop had proven irrevocably that she embodied it.
The office smelled of spent gunpowder and dust, a lingering reminder of what had just transpired. Kara Bishop stood a few feet from General Vane, who was now cuffed and flanked by MPs. His face was pale, a mixture of humiliation, disbelief, and the residual adrenaline of near death. Outside the office, the base was slowly regaining order, soldiers emerging from cover, tallying the wounded and coordinating the remaining defense. Lieutenant Colonel Shaw approached, her expression grave but tinged with relief. "Lieutenant Bishop, the situation outside is stabilizing. The perimeter breach has been contained. Casualties are minimal compared to what could have happened." Karen nodded, though her mind was still racing. She had reacted instinctively, neutralizing Vane without lethal force, yet every decision had consequences. One misstep, one lapse in judgment, and lives, including her own, would have been lost. Vane's voice broke the tense silence, weak but unbroken. You could have killed me. You had every right." "I could have," Kara replied evenly, her voice steady. "But you would not have learned anything from my vengeance. Leadership is measured by restraint, not power." The general's eyes flickered with something akin to shame. He realized, perhaps for the first time, that his authority did not grant invincibility. Rank could not substitute for skill, judgment, or discipline. Kara had proven that with clarity and precision. Shaw cleared her throat. "We need to process the incident formally. Every camera, every witness, this will go to command. You did your duty, Kara, but Vane's actions must be reviewed. The data drive, the evidence of his prior errors is also critical." Kara felt the tightness in her chest. The drive contained not just proof of negligence, but lives lost because of those mistakes. She had protected the soldiers today, but the shadow of Vane's poor decisions loomed over the entire unit.
Vane's handcuffs clicked softly as he adjusted them. "This will haunt me," he muttered, voice low, almost to himself. "You've changed how this command will see me." Kara remained silent, letting the weight of her actions speak. Every officer and soldier who had witnessed the confrontation would carry the memory. A woman, SEAL medic, had stopped a rogue general, preserved life, and upheld the honor of her duty. The medbay team emerged, tending to minor injuries and checking on the soldiers Kara had stabilized during the breach. She watched them for a moment, seeing the relief, the gratitude, and the unspoken acknowledgement of her skill and courage. It was recognition without ceremony, silent but potent. Shaw approached again. "You'll need to provide a full debrief. Command will want statements from all witnesses. The base will be on edge until the investigation concludes." Kara exhaled slowly. "Understood. I'll give the facts. No embellishments, no drama, just what happened." Vane shifted in his cuffs, his face a mask of tension. Kara's eyes met his one last time. There was no arrogance left, only a grudging acknowledgement. In that office, amid the chaos and gunfire, discipline, skill, and humanity had won. Outside, the desert night remained restless. Fires smoldered, sands swirled, and distant artillery punctuated the horizon. Karen knew the base was far from safe, yet she had achieved the impossible, controlled a deadly situation, protected lives, and held her moral compass intact. She turned toward the medbay, the data drive secure in her pack, every muscle still tense from the encounter. Tomorrow, the investigation would begin. Today, she had survived, acted, and proven that courage was measured not by rank, but by action under fire. And Kara Bishop, Navy SEAL medic, had once again lived by that principle.
The morning sun burned weakly over Al-Sara, painting the sand in harsh gold and shadow. Kara Bishop walked the corridors of the base, med pack slung over her shoulder, eyes scanning every corner for threats, but also for whispers. The aftermath of last night's confrontation had left the command structure fractured, trust fragile, and every officer wary of reprisals. Colonel Shaw met her at the briefing room. "Lieutenant, command is reviewing all footage and statements. Vane's actions are under scrutiny, and the higher-ups want clarity. Be precise. Stick to facts." Karen nodded. Precision had always been her weapon. She carried no illusions about politics, hierarchy, or ego. Her duty was to truth, to life, and to the principles that had guided her through countless firestorms. Inside the room, several senior officers were already assembled, papers and tablets scattered across the table. Eyes shifted toward her as she entered. Vane was there too, flanked by MPs, his face a mixture of indignation and thinly veiled fear. "You'll tell us exactly what happened," Shaw said firmly. "Every action, every decision, every threat. Leave nothing out." Kara took a deep breath. Her voice was steady, carrying over the tension in the room. "General Vane drew his sidearm and fired 5 rounds at me. I evaded, then neutralized him using controlled tactics. No lethal force was used. The incident was recorded by internal cameras, and all soldiers in proximity can verify the sequence of events." Murmurs spread through the room. Some officers shifted uncomfortably, others were quietly impressed. Vane's face darkened, his jaw tightening. "This is exaggerated," he said, voice low. "I acted under duress. There was chaos outside. She acted under training and discipline," Kara interrupted, her tone unwavering. "Your rank did not save you, nor did it grant immunity from the consequences of your actions. That is the principle here." There was a pause. Silence hung thick. The weight of her words settled over the officers. For the first time, many realized that authority alone did not dictate survival or morality. The higher command had always preached accountability, but witnessing a woman SEAL enforce it in the crucible of fire brought the lesson to life. Shaw cleared her throat. "The investigation will continue, but initial reports confirm Lieutenant Bishop's account. The base will function as normal, but morale and trust must be restored. We will need to review protocols to prevent a recurrence." Vane's gaze flicked toward Kara, simmering with humiliation. Yet beneath that anger was the grudging acknowledgement that she had acted with clarity, courage, and restraint, qualities he had failed to demonstrate. Kara observed the room, noting subtle shifts. Officers who had doubted her competence now studied her with measured respect. Those who admired rank above action felt the sting of clarity. She had disrupted the traditional hierarchy, not with rebellion, but with unwavering professionalism. Later, she stepped outside to the courtyard. The desert wind carried the scent of burned equipment and scorched sand. Soldiers she had saved were assembling, tending to minor injuries, exchanging whispered thanks. She allowed herself a brief moment to feel the quiet acknowledgement of her deeds, not loud, not celebrated, but deeply understood. Kara understood the truth she had been living by for years. Heroism was silent, measured in actions that saved lives rather than earned praise. The cold open of her life, the 5 rounds, the confrontation with Vane, had tested not just her skills, but her philosophy. And now, in the harsh light of Al-Sara morning, she knew that the next battles would not just be fought with bullets, but with integrity, discipline, and the relentless courage to act rightly when no one else would. Kara Bishop's mission was far from over. The storm had passed, but the shadows of command and the challenge of upholding justice within them remained.
The base hummed with cautious normalcy. Soldiers moved in deliberate patterns, still uneasy after the previous night's events. Kara Bishop walked the perimeter, medpack at her side, observing reactions she could not ignore. Hushed whispers, sideways glances, the subtle hesitation of men and women uncertain how to reconcile rank with action. In the command tent, General Vane sat stiffly behind a desk, hands clasped, eyes dark with simmering indignation. Kara approached, maintaining a careful distance. She did not fear him. She had neutralized him when it mattered, but she understood the subtle battlefield of egos she now had to navigate. "Lieutenant Bishop," Vane said, his tone deceptively calm, "do you realize the chaos you've caused? Command structure, morale. I realize that leadership is measured by the lives preserved under your orders, not by fear imposed on subordinates. That chaos you speak of is the result of your negligence, not my actions." Vane's jaw tightened. "You think discipline is yours to enforce?" "No," Kara said, voice steady. "Discipline is universal. You proved you could not uphold it. I did. That is the difference." Outside, soldiers were gathering for routine drills, their movements rigid yet coordinated. Some lingered near Kara, offering subtle nods or brief wordless acknowledgement. Respect did not need ceremony. It was earned through action. She could see the conflict in Vane's officers, admiration for her skill, fear of his temper, and confusion over what loyalty truly demanded. Colonel Shaw entered, clipboard in hand, eyes scanning both Kara and Vane. "We need a cohesive command structure moving forward. Vane's behavior will be reviewed, and we must ensure trust is rebuilt. Kara, your role is pivotal, both as a medic and as an example of conduct under fire." Kara nodded, feeling the familiar weight of responsibility. Her thoughts drifted briefly to the data drive in her pack, proof of past negligence that could destabilize more than just egos. It could reshape command accountability. She had to wield it judiciously, like every tool she carried into the field. Vane stood up abruptly, the air tense. "You think you've won because you survived? But survival does not equal authority, Lieutenant." Kara met his gaze without flinching. "Authority without integrity is meaningless. You should remember that next time bullets are flying." For a moment, the tension was palpable. Neither willing to yield, both aware of the fragile lines of power. Then, slowly, Vane sank back into his chair, his posture rigid, controlled. Kara's quiet confidence had claimed the moral high ground without a single shot fired. She turned toward the courtyard, where the soldiers continued drills under the desert sun. Her eyes swept over the faces. Young recruits, seasoned SEALs, medics, each silently absorbing the lesson of last night. Courage and discipline were not defined by rank. A corporal approached, lowering his voice. "Ma'am, we all saw what you did. Never doubted you, but that was something else." Kara gave a fine nod. "Keep your focus. That is how we survive and how we honor those who cannot. Vane's voice, quiet but sharp, reached her ears. This isn't over. Kara did not respond. Some battles were won not with words, but with the enduring presence of competence and principle. And here, in the fractured lines of Al-Sahra, she had established a precedent that would resonate long after the dust settled. The desert sun beat down relentlessly, casting long shadows. Kara felt the tension, the watchfulness, the anticipation of what could come next. But she also felt certainty. She would continue to act with integrity, skill, and courage, regardless of who tried to undermine her. The storm of bullets had passed, but the storm of power, ego, and accountability had only begun. And Kara Bishop was ready.
The base was tense, an intricate web of nerves stretched taut across sand and steel. Kara Bishop surveyed the courtyard from the medbay's edge, noting every movement of her soldiers, every flash of light reflecting from armor and helmets. Reports had come in of a second wave of insurgent activity near the eastern perimeter, an unpredictable threat layered atop the already fragile morale of Al-Sahra. Colonel Shaw approached, her expression taut. "Lieutenant, we cannot afford hesitation. Vane's missteps yesterday weakened trust among some units. You will lead the containment team. Precision, control, and rapid stabilization are critical." Kara's gaze flicked to Vane, seated behind the command tent, silently observing, restrained but seething. The man's pride had not diminished, yet her authority in the field was now indisputable. She acknowledged Shaw with a slight nod, adjusting her med pack. Every strap, every tool, every ounce of her training was about to be tested. The perimeter team assembled quickly. Kara moved among them, issuing orders with calm authority. Positions Alpha through Delta, eyes sharp, maintain spacing, keep comms open at all times. First casualty, first medevac, no exceptions. Her tone left no room for doubt. This was her battlefield now, and discipline would dictate survival. Explosions in the distance punctuated the tension, sending plumes of dust and sand into the desert air. Soldiers ducked behind barriers, rifles scanning the horizon. Kara sprinted between them, assessing readiness, checking weapons, and providing last-minute guidance. Her eyes constantly shifted, measuring distance, cover, and potential threat trajectories. Suddenly, a flare burst overhead, illuminating the chaos. Shots rang out as insurgents pushed forward, exploiting gaps in the perimeter. Kara dozed toward a fallen soldier, stabilizing a leg wound with practiced precision, guiding him toward cover. Her voice was calm yet commanding. "Stay with me. Breathe. You're going to make it." From the command tent, Vane barked orders, attempting to regain control. Kara ignored him, focusing entirely on the present threat. His interference only highlighted the difference between hollow rank and actionable skill. The insurgents pressed harder, exploiting the confusion. Kara recognized the pattern instantly, a repeated tactic she had encountered in previous missions. She issued split-second commands, suppressive fire to sectors Alpha and Gamma, medics positioned at Beta, a mobile extraction team ready at Delta. The team responded without hesitation, movements precise, rehearsed, and synchronized. Amid the chaos, Kara spotted an insurgent aiming toward a trapped soldier. Without thought, she rolled forward, intercepting the line of fire, striking the assailant with CQB precision. Adrenaline surged, but her mind remained clear. She stabilized the soldier immediately after, keeping him conscious while radioing for evac. Vane's voice cracked over comms, frustrated and incredulous. "This is insubordination," he shouted. Kara's response was a glance toward the horizon, her actions speaking louder than words. The perimeter was holding, casualties minimal, and trust in her leadership reinforced by the rapid stabilization of chaos. As the second strike subsided, Kara surveyed the courtyard. Smoke drifted across sand dunes. Soldiers caught their breath. Equipment smoldered slightly, but the team was intact. Every life preserved was a testament to discipline, training, and courage.
Kara approached Vane, who had finally left the tent, his pride bruised but still evident. "Lieutenant, I see. You command differently." Kara's eyes met his, steady and unyielding. "Leadership is not a title. It is a responsibility. We just survived because I acted on it." The desert wind carried the scent of scorched sand and gunpowder. Kara exhaled slowly, her muscles taut yet controlled. The second strike had ended, but the lessons reverberated through every officer, soldier, and medic present. Competence, courage, and moral clarity outweighed rank when survival demanded it. Kara Bishop had proven once more that a woman SEAL, armed with discipline and humanity, could steer the course of life and death through a battlefield dominated by doubt, ego, and chaos.
The desert night had settled over Al-Sara, stars faintly visible beyond the haze of smoke and dust. Kara Bishop stood at the edge of the courtyard, med pack slung over her shoulder, scanning the quiet aftermath. The second strike had been contained, the perimeter secured, and casualties minimized. For a fleeting moment, the base exhaled collectively, a fragile pause between chaos and order. General Marcus Vane was seated in a makeshift holding area, his hands cuffed, his uniform rumpled, eyes dark with the residue of yesterday's humiliation. The once arrogant general had been stripped of authority in a single decisive encounter, and the weight of accountability pressed on him like the desert heat. Kara approached, her boots crunching on the sand, each step measured, deliberate. She had survived the 5 rounds, neutralized a threat from the highest rank, and preserved life without compromise. Vane's gaze met hers, a mix of disbelief, fear, and grudging respect. "You saved me," he said quietly, the arrogance gone, replaced with the raw edge of realization. "After everything." Kara's expression remained calm. Discipline and humanity define a soldier, not rank, not ego. "You nearly killed me, yet I acted to preserve your life." That is the difference between leadership and tyranny. MPs secured the area, guiding Vane toward official custody. Soldiers gathered, observing silently. Their eyes followed Kara, recognizing the principle she had demonstrated. Courage was measured in restraint and action, not words or medals. Inside the command tent, Colonel Shaw debriefed officers, reviewing footage of the cold open, the 5 rounds fired, Kara's reflexive evasion, the CQB hold, and the controlled capture of Vane. Every movement, every decision was scrutinized, but the outcome was undeniable. Kara Bishop had acted with precision, skill, and moral clarity. Kara moved among the medics and soldiers, checking injuries, stabilizing the wounded, and offering brief words of encouragement. Each life preserved was a testament to her principle of quiet heroism. There was no ceremony, no applause, only the subtle, mutual acknowledgement of respect earned in the crucible of combat. Vane, escorted to a secure vehicle, turned toward Kara one last time. "I underestimated you," he admitted, his voice low. "You've changed how command will see me and perhaps the base. You were given authority, but authority without integrity is meaningless. Remember that." As the vehicle drove away, Kara allowed herself a slow breath, muscles finally relaxing from hours of heightened tension. The night was silent except for the faint hum of distant generators and the wind stirring sand across the base. She thought of the soldiers she had saved, the lives she had stabilized, the chaos she had controlled, not for recognition, but because it was right. Al-Sara was quiet again, but the lessons endured. Arrogance and abuse of power were self-destructive. Courage and discipline could overturn even the highest rank, and the quiet heroism of a SEAL medic, a woman, could define the moral compass of an entire base. Kara Bishop looked out across the desert, the faint glow of dawn approaching. Her mission had extended beyond medical intervention. She had enforced accountability,
preserved life, and demonstrated that true leadership was rooted in skill, courage, and humanity. And in the stillness of the desert, with the threat neutralized and lives preserved, the moral victory was silent, complete, and enduring. The base had survived the storm. Kara Bishop had survived it with honor, and the story of the woman SEAL who stopped a general would echo quietly through Al-Sara for years to come.